Hello and welcome to a new show here on Solano College Sports Network, Hypothetically Speaking. I'm your host, Stephen Babb. So on Hypothetically Speaking, we will take a look at different sports topics and talk about the hypotheticals in that topic and which direction it will go. Today I'm joined by a panel of Mike Mulberg, Uric Rabito, and Brian Nelson. The topic today will be the Warriors' core four and moving forward for the team, if they will be able to keep the core four together, the contract implications, and going into the luxury tax for ownership and GM Bob Myers. So Brian, the Warriors have 8 players signed under contract going into next season. What do you think the first initial moves might be?
Well, first off, I think that the big man is something that they'll have to address. Obviously, they have Draymond Green. Jordan Bell's still on his rookie contract, but a lot of the expiring contracts that are leaving are the David Wests, JaVale McGee. They got criticized kind of towards the playoff run that I've heard the argument that they were poorly constructed because they had like 4 centers on a team that's so dependent on versatility in terms of like perimeter defense. So I think maybe signing JaVale back would be a good move, and adding another perimeter piece. Trevor Ariza has been rumored to want to go to the Warriors. I think that would be a great fit because he's 6'8", he's a 3-and-D kind of guy. Would be a great complementary piece with Andre Iguodala off the bench and Patrick McCaw. So I think just touching up some of the end of the rotation bench players, and you're lucky enough that you have your core 4 signed for at least another year.
So Uric, the biggest, I think, signing this summer is a gentleman who has an opt-out, and that's Kevin Durant. So if you were Kevin, what would you think going into this offseason?
Mostly, I don't know. I don't think I don't know. Maybe he might take another pay cut, but I don't know if. I think it all depends on really him having a discussion with the team. Because I don't really think he cares about the money, so I could see him doing that. You know, I could see him taking another pay cut. Why not?
Okay. And Mike, if you were the team, how would you kind of approach the re-signing of Kevin?
I mean, at the end of the day, he plays such a big role for the Warriors. I mean, picking up somebody like that right there, I mean, that changes a club. That changes the atmosphere. I mean, you even watch them in the playoffs this year. They're blowing teams out left and right. There are some close games, yeah, but with the addition of Kevin Durant, that really helped him come back from the Rockets being down, 2 games going in? So at the end of the day, if I have the chance to play with a guy like that, game in or night in and night out, I'd do everything I can, whether it's a little cut here and there or whatever, because you got sponsors, you got all this other stuff. I mean, if you're competing, like Clay said, he's on paid handsomely. You know, I'm competing for championships year in and year out, so I can't complain too much. That's why he really doesn't want to leave. So if I had the chance to play with somebody like that, I mean, you could pay me pennies. If I'm getting these rings, that's a blessing right there. So.
And luckily, it's not actual pennies. So
we're
talking about $30 million versus $40 million.
Millions of dollars here. So speaking of the money, let's kind of get down into the nitty-gritty of what these contracts are actually worth. So Kevin last year made $27 million, which was a significant pay cut to the value that he brings to any team. So to go and sign another 1 year or 2 year contract with a player opt out to kind of restructure again, he's still looking to make maybe around $35 million. If you were to go max contract level, you're looking at 38, close to $40 million per year. Right now, with the 8 players the Warriors have under contract, they're sitting at $102 million. That's already putting them into the luxury tax bracket. So going into signing Kevin Durant, whatever it is, it's going to push you farther and farther into that luxury tax. Brian, what do you think the team should kind of consider with that?
I think 2020 is the year that they really should be focused on, because that's the year that Draymond Green's contract runs out, and it's easy to have Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and then Klay Thompson all shirt up within the next, obviously Steph last year, Kevin Durant this year, and Klay next year. But then Draymond Green is that last piece of, do we re-sign him to his max contract? If he wins another Defensive Player of the Year, he's eligible for the Supermax. So that's a contract in 2020 that, the Warriors only have 2 guaranteed contracts right now in 2020. That's Steph Curry and Damian Jones. And Damian Jones is on his rookie deal. So you don't have you don't have any money tied up besides Steph Curry right now currently, and if you re-sign Durant and then let's say hypothetically speaking Klay Thompson next year, so you have 3 of your 4 signed for 2020. I was looking at projections, and the projected cap there is 120 million, which by my estimation with luxury tax usually is around 20 million over the salary cap. So the luxury tax mark, which is what the Warriors really have to think about, is 140 million dollars. And so with Steph Curry being signed to $40 million deals, if Kevin Durant, Klay, and Draymond take 30 each, that's 150 million. So you're only 10 million over the luxury tax. And because they're going to be such repeat offenders over that time, they're going to have to pay 2.5 to every dollar they spend. So if you sign a $1 million contract, the Warriors themselves have to pay 2.5 million on top of it.
And kind of touching on that, it is a sliding scale, this luxury tax. So depending on how much over the cap that you go into the luxury tax mark, the number increases on what that tax actually means. So for instance, if you are $15 to $20 million over the cap, you're going to pay $3.25 on the dollar. So simply speaking, say I'm Nick Young and I'm making $5 million a year. Well, that's going to cost me almost $16 million as the team to re-sign a player like Nick Young at that kind of veteran mid-level. So moving in, what players out there on the market would you potentially sign knowing that you're going to have to pay, exponentially more for that player than maybe what they're worth?
I would say mostly players that have done something that year. You know what I mean? Of course, the Kevin Durant's, Draymond's. I'm not really sure about the Klay because I feel like there's other players that you can fill his spot, pay less. Defensively though, for sure, I feel like whoever really puts in defensive moves, or it could be they get defensive player of the year, or anything defensive really. I feel like that's gonna push any team right now. Seeing how those are the teams that are winning the championships. What's the best defensive wise.
Okay. And Mike, any free agents out there that you would like to maybe see the Warriors try to pursue this offseason?
Well, the thing I keep thinking about is, look at Steph Curry, look at Klay, look at Draymond. How did the Warriors get them? They drafted them. The Warriors, they have a pretty good core, and I think what they got to do is they got to stick to what they've been doing the whole time is draft. Yeah, you could go get players, you go pay all the big bucks for big names here and there, which they did. They got Kevin Durant, and there's talk supposedly they might get Anthony Davis, but you all know about that. But at the end of the day, I think they just got to keep doing what they're doing. I say go with the draft because, you're not giving those guys $6 million. You're not giving them $7 million. Let them learn from big elite players like Kevin Durant, like Steph Curry, like the Draymond, like Iggy. Let them learn from there and and then go from there. So I say just keep going the draft route and see how it rides out.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, I really like that idea of having the veteran winners on your team to help kind of guide the young players like the Jordan Bells and the Cooks of the team, the Quinn Cooks, and kind of having them learn from this veteran presence. If you had to choose, say, GM Brian, and the core four is just becoming too expensive, who do you see as being the most expendable piece?
I know Yurik said Klay Thompson can be easily replaced. I disagree with that. I think he's top 2 shooter in the league with Steph Curry. And then he provides them such a value on their defensive end with his perimeter defense that he is always on the best on-ball player for the other team. And that allows Steph Curry to play the Trevor Arizas. Yeah. He gets a break on the defensive end. So I would say if anyone had to go, not only because he's the 4th one to have his contract come up, but because you also have his replacement in Jordan Bell already on the roster, I think Draymond Green, even though he's such a vital piece to their defense and he shapes their identity as a team. He brings that toughness that nobody else does. But if I had to choose one of the 4, I would say Draymond Green.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And also speaking to the players as individuals themselves, I think that Draymond would be the least likely out of the 4 to take a pay cut. He has been Defensive Player of the Year. He does make all defensive teams. He now is a perennial All-Star. So he's going to potentially be eligible for a max deal coming up. And for him to leave money on the table after he feels like he gives his heart, soul, blood, sweat, tears, everything on the court, I kind of see him as being the least likely. The most likely, of course, would be Klay Thompson, because I don't think he cares. Kind of, Mike, like what you mentioned, he's already making a lot of money. He cares about rings and championships.
And his bulldog.
And his
bulldog.
yes, Rocco. Shout out to Rocco. Rocco's got all the jerky treats I think he'll ever need for his life.
Yeah, totally.
And Klay has also said, Uric, that having more championship rings than his father, former Laker Michael Thompson, is more important to him. And now he's got 3. But I have a feeling that at the dinner table at his family's house, being able to say, I've got 4, I've got 5, I've got 6. What do you think about that?
Well, technically he could get him other places. You know, it's not just the Golden State Warriors that's gonna, you know, he could get a ring from. To me, I just look at it as basically, how many shooters do you need? You know what I mean? Like, how many shooters on the team do you need for them to figure out, like, okay, we can actually win a championship, or, you know, at least get to the playoffs. And I think really Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, they could take them there without Klay, you know what I mean? But without Draymond Green, I don't think they can really put a, you know, a foot in it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I hear what you're saying. Mike, know? what do you have to think about that?
You know, I just keep thinking back to, you know, recently the playoffs. I mean, you had Curry was non-existent for a game. You had Klay was non-existent for a game. And then you had KD, he dropped, 46 that game or 44?
Yeah.
And then you go back to the season before, you had Curry was non-existent. You had KD non-existent, and then Klay, didn't he have, it was 56 one game or something? But, I mean, at the end of the day, you need shooters. Defense wins championships. That's the big thing. That's the thing that's taught day in and day out. But, I mean, everybody's going to have a bad day. I mean, you're going to have some guys who are going to, you know, a group of guys who might all have a bad day. But, I mean, I say Klay's a shooter, Curry's a shooter, KD's a shooter. Draymond, I mean, he's a big defensive role and all that. He gets his in, night out. Like, he still averages, 12, 14, all that. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's so many other options I think you choose from that are a lot cheaper, a little bit younger, and I think would be a little bit nicer of a fit. But
yeah, to me, I look at health and longevity of career. Draymond is an undersized player. Everybody knows this. He bangs hard. He can cover a 7-footer. He can cover a point guard. He can cover a shooting guard. All these things, I think, in my opinion, will start to wear on a player. Big men usually don't last in the league as long as, say, point guards and shooting guards do. And Klay this year was the first time he missed any games in his career. He's never injured. Klay was also in college a cross-country runner. So Klay is never tired. You never have to take Klay out of the game unless it's maybe because of foul trouble. So I kind of look at that and have that play a role into, if I'm going to sign a player to, a 5-year extension. I kind of think I would like Klay better. Kind of on your point, Brian, he does play on-ball defense probably better than anybody else in the league. And then you add to that being the second best shooter in the league. That's kind of an unmatched thing. Now, in the draft, kind of, Mike, what you were talking about, you can find a bulldog in the draft. Yeah. You can find a bulldog in the second, sometimes even the third round to come and play defense. Now, Draymond is still under contract for 2 more years. So say you draft a player this year or even next year, Draymond doesn't have to go anywhere until his contract is up. So he can also mentor like a Jordan Bell to even a Kevon Looney, who I think can become a better interior defensive player. So, those are kinds of things that the Warriorship ownership and Bob Myers are really going to have to look at. It's easy for us to sit up here and spend all their money.
Yeah.
Listening, Joe Lacob, the owner of the Warriors, the majority owner of the Warriors, was on 95.7 The Game talking about this yesterday in an hour-long interview. And, he likes to take risks. And he also knows that winning championships makes money. I mean, the team right now is valued at, according to Forbes, $3.1 billion. I mean, I think they bought it for $460 million, not that long ago, 2010. So, winning makes money. Championships makes you a lot of money. So Bob Myers even said it costs money to make money. So I think with that philosophy moving forward, but you know, it's definitely a fun debate to have up here, and I'd like to thank my panel for sitting with me up here on this discussion. It's Mike Malberg, Yurik Roboto, and Brian Nelson for joining me today on this discussion about hypotheticals and hypothetically speaking of the Warriors core forward and how to move forward. And I'm your host, Stephen Babb for Solano College Sports Network. Tune in next time. Thank you.
Go Lakers.
The exponential growth from the program from my first year to my third year now, that's what keeps me coming back and keeps me excited and just like fulfills me as a person.
It's so impressive, and we every time we walk in here, you guys are doing something different. It's great. It's
Nothing but opportunities here, and we have sports to cover, we have the equipment.
Because the more ambitious you are, the more opportunities you'll have.
on-the-job training is huge.
Get the hands-on experience.
When someone asks who can do it, you know, you can raise your hand and say, I can do it, so.
Joining the class was the best decision I ever made.
Stand by, we're going to go to cut one. And cut one. Cross court to Audrey Jones. Audrey for three! And it's good! With 1.3 seconds left on the game clock. Audrey Jones with one of the biggest shots.
The sky's the limit, really, with what we can do here.